This video marks the 3-year anniversary since the publication of my book, Tailbone Pain Relief Now. And I really wanted to take this opportunity to reflect on the past 3 years since the book came out. I'm Dr. Patrick Foy. I'm an MD or medical doctor, and I'm the director of the Coccyx Pain Center or Tailbone Pain Center here in New Jersey in the United States. You can find me online at tailbonedoctor.com. And I've been the director of the Tailbone Pain Center here for many years, almost 20 years now. And really the idea to write a book for patients is something that was on my to-do list for more than a decade before I actually took on the project and did it and completed that, and it was published about 3 years ago in September of 2015, so 3 years ago this month from the time that I'm making the video now. And really it has been a terrific experience writing the book and putting things down in what I hope is an organized and easy to read way. And prior to that, most of the things I was publishing were really things that I was publishing for other physicians, and I still do a lot of that. I'm a professor here at the medical school, so I write book chapters and research articles in journals, and I give grand rounds lectures and lectures at national and international conferences and all of those kinds of things, and I teach our medical students here. I've trained thousands of young doctors over the years. And the idea for the book, though, was to write something that was not for physicians, but rather that was for people that were actually suffering from tailbone pain. And one of the things I've found is that people have a tough time finding information. They have a tough time finding doctors who understand their condition. So the idea for the book was as a means or a way to empower patients with knowledge, because with the knowledge of how to navigate the healthcare system and advocate for themselves and describe to their doctors the proper types of x-rays or MRI or CT scan that they might need, or treatment options, because a lot of doctors unfortunately don't know that much about this area. Compared to low back pain, for example, tailbone pain is probably 10 or 20,000 times less common. So many doctors and radiology centers just are not that familiar with evaluating or treating problems of the tailbone or coccyx. So the idea of the book was to put all of that in an organized fashion. The first half of the book is mostly about diagnosis for tailbone pain, the various things that can cause tailbone pain, everything from fractures and dislocations and arthritis and unstable joints and bone spurs and cancer or malignancy in the area and a whole variety of other things. And then the second half of the book is all about treatment, everything from cushions and physical therapy and manipulation and local injections and medications by mouth and surgical removal of the tailbone. So each of those different topics I just mentioned and many more have their own chapter in here, so that there's more than 30 chapters in all, 272 pages, all about the coccyx or tailbone. I can hold up the table of contents here if you want to see some of that for what's in there. But really, I wanted to take this opportunity to reflect on what it's been like in the 3 years since the book came out. First of all, in the making of the book, my publishing team sort of thought I was crazy because it is such a small focal niche area to write a 272-page book about a part of the body that is about half the size of your pinky finger. To some of them seemed a little bit crazy, and mostly I had publishing companies that wanted me to change it into a book about low back pain in general. And certainly, again, low back pain is far more common, and from a publisher perspective, I can understand how publishers would be more interested in a book on low back pain because, again, there's 10 or 20,000 times more potential interested readers. But the problem with this is that there really was nothing previously available for in a book form for people who are suffering from tailbone pain, whereas there are many resources and books available specifically on the topic of low back pain. So really, my focus was to stay, specific to the coccyx or tailbone, and it may seem crazy to have 272 pages all about that, but I really wanted to have a comprehensive and easy to read sort of manual for people to go by as they're figuring out or understanding what seems to be causing their pain. The response has really been terrific. There's not a there's certainly not a huge number of the books compared to something on low back pain, but there have been a couple thousand copies of the book now out in circulation, largely through Amazon or Barnes & Nobles and other places online that people can obtain the book. I have heard from people who've read the book in essentially every continent on the planet except for Antarctica. So if you're making a trip to Antarctica and you take the book along, send me a photo of you there, so we'll complete the continents with that. But it has really been one of the most gratifying academic projects that I've done in a quarter of a century or more now as a physician. Really empowering patients with the knowledge that they need to understand what's causing their pain and the best ways to work with their doctors for treatment. So I've seen patients who have emailed me or contacted me and have told me specifically parts of the book that became helpful to them, or how it helped them to have a conversation with their treating physician about everything from as simple tips in here like how to find a physician who's experienced in this area, or what types of x-rays or MRI or CT scan or other things might be most helpful, or how to evaluate whether the radiology report even shows that whether the study even included the coccyx, or how to look at the imaging studies with your treating physician and ask them to specifically point to the tailbone. That one tip alone is probably one of the most common things that I hear from people around the world who say, I had my MRI or x-rays done 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. I was told everything was fine, but I read the book and it said, have your doctor point out your tailbone on the imaging studies. And very, very common that it'll turn out that the tailbone was not included at all on the x-rays or MRI that the patient and physician were told was normal, or that it was included but there was a blatant abnormality that the radiologist missed. And then that lays the groundwork for further treatment and changing things from something that may at times seem hopeless to a patient to something that really is treatable with a careful and thoughtful approach by a physician or medical team experienced in evaluating and treating the coccyx, or even if they're not as experienced as ideally they would be, if they're at least open to learning more about that area, then there's a lot of information that can be helpful. Again, written mostly for patients, this particular book, but there's a lot of information that doctors could learn as well. In fact, if you're a patient and you read this book, these 272 pages, I guarantee you will know more about coccyx pain than 99.9% of physicians out there. So at any rate, those are some of my thoughts now. 3 years since the book was first published, and it's been really one of the most gratifying things that I've done, as a physician, as far as academic projects. And really the whole goal, of course, is to try to make a positive difference in the world wherever we can, just like all of us try to in our day-to-day lives. If you are looking for the book, you can get that either online at Amazon.com or Barnes & Nobles or other places. You can get it or through the website tailbonebook.com. If you're interested in coming to see me in person, easiest way to find me online is www.tailbonedoctor.com. And again, this is just some of my thoughts on 3 years since the book first came into publication. Okay, if you have comments on the book or feedback on the book, certainly post that online at Amazon. That would be helpful. Or if you have questions, you can post them down below this video, and I'll be happy to read those and hopefully respond as well. Okay, bye-bye.